Hi everyone, this is another episode of the ReThink podcast. As usual, we have Israel and myself, Raheem. Today we're going to be talking about a number of topics. Some of them more leaning towards a number of them leaning towards the tech space.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, but the first one, the big one that we're focusing on, the topical one, is the recent ad
The newest ad from Apple.
Yeah, recent ad from Apple that we're the one that was proven to be more controversial one apparently.
It seems as though we're always on controversial ads at this point.
Yeah,
right?
I
don't know.
So
Must be a trend.
for those that don't know, the ad that we're talking about in question is the one where it was in, I think it was the Apple's keynote, recent keynote,
Apple's
right?
recent keynote where they introduced the new iPad with the M4 chip.
Yeah, right. And in this ad, pretty much it had a whole bunch of instruments, items, and things like that. All that served as visual representations of the functions that the iPad can do. So imagine trumpets and stuff like that all being crushed.
So cameras, musical instruments,
all cameras,
paints,
all sorts of stuff just being
emojis.
crushed. I think they were being crushed, and then
Being crushed, yeah.
And then in the ad, after they were crushed, the iPad was revealed.
Yeah, we'll
right?
put a link to the ad in the description
so
below.
or we'll have it playing in the segment here, but whichever. And
Whichever doesn't get us sued for copyright.
Yeah, right. So that's what the ad was about. Now, the reason it sparked controversy was because some people were commenting and saying that on their social media and their links and whatnot that the ad served as being disrespectful to people that especially the people that play instruments. That people tend to care very much about instruments. Instruments do cost a lot of money. And they are seen as very prized possessions to those people that utilize those particular items, like I said, trumpets, the cameras.
So people felt it was like disrespectful to all creatives, or it was tone deaf for creatives and where we are in the world.
It's like Apple, I guess from their point of view, it's kind of Apple spending all this bunch of money crushing these things to then just use for an ad, right?
Yeah, and not only that, like there was an ad several years ago, like almost 12 years ago or more? 16
12,
years
12,
ago. Well, 16
15,
years ago.
Yeah.
LG had a very similar ad, which I thought was where the controversy would have come from.
Yeah.
LG had a very similar ad where they crushed creative tools just like that.
Yeah.
But there was no backlash about it. It was for one of their phones. There was no backlash about it at the time. But now there was backlash about the Apple ad. And I think, we said it the last time, context is king. Like the environment in which you do stuff is really important. What about the world we're in right now could create that kind of backlash for an ad?
So I will be honest, there's a bit of this disconnect for me, but in that I can't immediately look at the ad and think, oh, I see something offensive about it. Now, putting myself in like maybe somebody else's point of view, they did bring up the perspective of the creatives, right? Mm-hmm. I can understand it from, like, we know how expensive the world has gotten, right? So things like cameras, things like the instruments, things like, I can't remember everything that was in the ad, but all those other things, they do cost money. Mm-hmm. And if, say, Apple did do this as a live they did this live footage where they actually got these real life items and crushed them, then it kind of just seems like a bit of a waste, and kind of like, okay, we have this money that we can use to do this ad, to do this, to advertise our own product, and we're not paying respect, as you said, to the fact that these items are very precious to people that use them.
Yeah.
Right. That's the angle that I can understand when I put myself in somebody else's shoes.
Yeah. I think we live in a world where, think of what was introduced at the start of this year, where Sora was introduced with creating all this amazing AI-generated video footage.
Yeah.
Last year we start to see AI engines come up with generative AI, ChatGPT, Google Gemini. We start to see all of these things coming up. So Adobe has Adobe Firefly in it. And so when you start to see all these things, I think it was more so within the environment, people thinking we are being replaced by technology. We're being replaced by AI, technology, not really honoring the creative skills that people have, and people just being replaced by machines.
But that might be the context that I'm in, because I thought that they were just crushing it to show like these are all the functions that you can get within the iPad.
Yeah, that's literally what Apple was doing. Right. Yeah, Apple was saying, look, all of this is now in one really smart, really thin iPad.
Right. And that's how I understood it.
Which is
So,
how we understood it.
Yeah.
You know, we went to sleep. We were like, this is great.
Cool.
A couple days
Yeah.
later,
a
Apple
whole-
apologizes, which is very unique. Apple rarely
Right.
apologizes.
Yeah. So but I also wanted to say the part that one of the things that reason I didn't take it any other way was because I thought that thing was 3D generated anyways, right? I figured it was probably 3D generated anyway, so they probably didn't use live footage, but that's besides the point.
Yeah, I guess it's the visceral reaction of seeing my creative tool of choice being crushed and replaced by one piece of technology. I think that was what really got people.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see where they're coming from.
Yeah.
For me, I'm like, the context matters again because the whole keynote leading up to it was telling you how powerful the M4 chip is, how thin the iPad, the new iPad is, how much it can do.
Yeah, it was very much geared towards the product.
It was geared toward the product and all of the different things the product can do.
Yeah.
Apple even introduced a new app based on Final Cut that allows you to film across multiple devices, one scene from multiple devices.
That was very cool.
That was amazing.
Like the possibilities in terms of just cinematography or vlogging or like all the uses of like setting up your own visual video space.
Yeah.
And like it cuts all less of the work, and we're trying to set up different angles and stuff like that. You could just set up the studio and record different perspectives all at once.
And now it's a nice purpose for you to be in the walled garden
Yeah.
of Apple products, right?
Yeah,
Where you
right.
have your iPad, your iPhone,
Exactly.
Multiple iPhones, multiple iPads,
Yeah, but
different angles.
But again, to bring it back to what we were saying though, as you said, Apple did apologize, and I think they pulled the ad down, right?
I don't think they pulled the ad
They
down.
didn't
The ad
pull
is
that?
still there,
The ad is still
but they
there?
apologized for it.
Right, which is something we don't
Normally see
you
from
don't
Apple.
normally see from Apple, but it's also it calls the question is like, okay, to what extent are we, I don't want to be offended, but like to what extent are we critiquing companies? Because when you look at something like that, they didn't do anything that you would obviously see as like they were like they maybe you could say they were bragging, but like it's a company that's advertising their products. So that's what they have to do. So it's like they didn't have all the normal markers you would have for like something that you say, okay, this is problematic. Like it was pretty much just
It was a nice conceptual ad.
thing. It was very conceptual, and I think we all, at least us down here, we all saw it as conceptual.
Yeah.
However, it might have like a different connotation for people that live in America, right?
But it also begs the question, how sensitive are people?
Yeah.
And how do companies and brands navigate that space where trigger warnings are real?
Yeah.
Right? Where people are triggered by various different things.
Yeah.
Right? And then when we look at this too, it's also on the backdrop of Apple being sued by the US government
Right.
for creating products that only tie in properly with each other.
Yeah.
So like that antitrust lawsuit. So there's so much happening around this that I think people are kind of like looking at Apple like,
yeah.
Even the whole thing about the blue bubble versus green bubble tax,
Yeah.
and we in the Caribbean,
Which is why I said they might have a different connotation towards America.
Yeah.
Because like I feel like
we just use WhatsApp for life, guys.
like so like, but like that kind of beef that's kind of happened between. It happens down here. Is like, I have Apple. Like, I'm Team Apple.
Yeah,
or
it's more Team Apple, Team Android,
right?
Team Apple, Team Samsung.
But for us in the Caribbean, it kind of stops there, right? Like,
and we just go, haha, whatever,
Yeah,
laugh it off,
right?
move
Move
on.
on.
People are bullied for not
genuinely
having iPhones
bullied,
in
right?
the US.
So it's like,
it's ridiculous.
as you said, so when we say context matters, I feel like there's a whole bigger context that is just surrounding like maybe either some distrust in Apple as a company, maybe it is a combination of all those other pre-existing issues coming to fruition and like layered on top of layer. That's kind of like we're just seeing them. We're seeing like people saw the ad as the ad in context of everything they already feel regarding Apple, right? So I think that might have led to the surprising outrage to the ad, but also to take a step back now, we have to look at ourselves. It's like, okay, let's say, Apple releases that kind of ad, right? And say we don't like it. Why do we feel the need to make it a point of protest, you might say, right? Like, because the one's response might just be that, oh, I didn't like that ad. I might not buy the product because of it, and that'd be the whole conclusion, right? You just see the ad. I don't really like that ad. Thought it was misplaced. Thought it was tone deaf. Because that's how we treat most things that aren't like that. I would say that aren't big name companies, right? How what's another good example? Like, or say within the tech space, MKBHD released. He did a review on the Rabbit. The Rabbit R1 thing, right? And it's pretty much just like an AI assistant.
The AI assistant device,
right? All right. And and KSBHD reaction was, I don't see how this product is worth the money or useful in its current state, but there's more to it. There's a future investment towards it, right? And so the rest of everybody would watch and KBHD's reviews would be like, oh, yeah, I don't see that product as useful. And so they didn't buy it.
Yeah.
Right? And that's kind of where the interaction stopped, right? So it's now we've moved into a space now we're kind of treating brands as if they're people.
Yeah.
Right? And
people want to interact with brands, and Apple is a brand that you either love it or you hate it.
Yeah.
I find so as people give the visceral reaction either way, the visceral reaction toward love or the visceral reaction toward hate.
Yeah, so we're moving so far into that space.
Because we are in a chronically online world. Yeah. Everyone's opinion matters. People are vying for relevance. Everybody wants that moment where they go viral. So I feel the need to say something loudly about Apple's, because my opinion matters now, right? I need to voice my opinion. I need to be up there. I need to have a perspective. And we're seeing that in so many different spaces. So one person's going to say, I don't like it, and then other people amplify that.
Yeah.
And other people amplify it.
Echo chambers and stuff like that.
And so people start to see, and people feel more entitled to criticize big brands, to hold them accountable, so to speak. Yeah. We're seeing that in other spaces with different things. And so it's like, that's where people are right now. And I think that's what we're seeing. So gone are the days where somebody's just going to scroll on by. I think we're past that. Even people. Like, you post something online that somebody doesn't like. Instead of them scrolling by it, they stop
and they comment.
And they want to drag you into an argument.
Yeah.
I think it gives people back a sense of power too, where if I get a movement behind what I'm saying, I can make this brand bend to my will. Right? I can make it. There was a recent football player, I don't want to get too far off topic, but this NFL player, he commented at a Catholic school about women being wife and mothers and how his wife found value in that. She had a career, she had a degree, but she found value in that. And he was speaking to an audience that was right for what he was saying. It was a Catholic school, Catholic college graduation. Shared set of values. And people online were up in arms. How could he say this in 2024, to a room full of women? He was speaking to people who shared his values. But people have launched a change.org campaign to get him ejected from the Kansas City Chiefs.
Wow, okay.
I think his name is Harrison Butker. People have launched...
You said he was an NFL player?
He is an NFL player.
Okay, so now that's kind of another set of confusion for me, because it's like, okay, the usual markers for problematic, as far as I'm seeing, is just pretty much people's issues are, he said something that they didn't agree with, right? No, I'm not well informed about the whole seminar, so I don't know if there are any other factors, but that's from what you're telling me. Just kind of, he had a set of values that he talked about with people that
shared his set of
values, and there was a visceral reaction from people that outside of that space that didn't share those views. And it's like, okay, fine. You're entitled to having those kinds of feelings. You're entitled to having those kinds of opinions, right? Or to have a visceral reaction, as you might say, right? You're entitled to that. I'm a little confused, though, when we get to a point where we say that something as relatively harmless as that comes into, oh, I now have to get him kicked. I'm assuming
they want to get him fired from the Kansas City Chiefs.
Right.
They've doxed him.
His job.
They've doxed him. His address, his number, everything has been put online.
Yeah.
Because
that's a very dangerous kind of thinking to kind of not just to act out or execute, but it's also very dangerous to teach other people because like with things with social media and whatnot, it's very common for people to copy what somebody else is doing. So whereas people might take on issues that they might not necessarily have thought about, but because they're seeing it constantly on social media, they might think, oh, maybe I should say something or I should do something. So it's like it kind of snowballs to the issue that really didn't need to be treated in that way.
Yeah, because I mean, and to bring it back to Apple too, and to big corporations in general, we're living in a world now where we're seeing things split into this idea of the proletariat versus the bourgeoisie, where you're dirt poor or you're dirt rich, and the people who are poor have to tear down the ones who are wealthy, right? You have to tear down the big bad corporation. And we're seeing that in the way people are responding to companies and brands. Now, if a company or brand does something wrong, they need to be held accountable.
Nobody
they
has a
need
problem
to be held
with that.
accountable.
Yeah.
And I think one of the other things too is that we're in a space where people have been like teched out. Like you've even mentioned it in terms of like just so much content on social media.
Yeah,
there's just so much that you're seeing,
right?
And people are moving back now toward doing things in the offline world. Going outside, enjoying the company of friends and family, getting out into nature, etc. So to see Apple take all these tools in which you can do that, like your camera that you would take photos of the natural world, and the guitar that you would sit down on a rock out in nature and play and enjoy, you know, all of these things, the canvas that you would paint on, etc. To see Apple take all of these, crush them, and put them in an iPad. I think the whole idea was people were saying, yeah, but I don't want everything to be technological anymore. I want to be able to have these real world things that I interact with.
Yeah, I mean, and it is a valid point, and it's actually something that we're going to talk about later down in this podcast, where we're talking about the effect of AI, right? But we'll side table that for now. But I think those real world experiences, like, you know, maybe actually feeling a canvas or maybe feeling things that are physical, like having genuine interactions with things that are very pertinent to the human experience is a relative thing. But I think this is a case where like maybe media literacy, like, you know, being able to understand something and put it into context of in everything else is something that maybe we need more of, because I don't think any genuine person looks at an iPad and think this is going to replace every single thing that exists in my life, right? You know, because we see it as, because how I see the iPad, you know, that whole concept of putting everything in the iPad is that maybe I don't need to spend, I don't know how much a saxophone costs or a trumpet costs or like a camera costs. Well, I know how a camera costs. So like some costs, a lot of money, right? So some cameras cost like $2,000 US or not. So it's 4K Barbados, right? Maybe I don't need to spend all of that on just one thing. I can spend all of that on an iPad that provides me with the access to these many things. So it's like, so in terms of like production, like the far-reaching effect of that, you know, like maybe we don't need to spend as much money on trees for canvas, right? Maybe like, so like maybe, you know,
trees for paper,
right? When trees for paper and or things like that, like, you know, like reducing the need for all these physical items, right? Maybe so that the things that need to produce them don't get affected as much, right? You know, because the earth conservation or environment conservation is a thing, right? So in a way, the iPad providing the functions to all of these things could actually be pro, I'm not really sure the term, like pro environment, but like
environmentally conscious,
right? Which is a value that like Apple
has,
right? So it's like seeing, like, and if Apple was to come out and say this is kind of where their thinking is lying, I'm pretty sure some people might actually support that. So that's what I'm saying. Like when they see the ad like that in a very small bubble, they're not seeing the whole bigger picture of how many different things this could benefit us as a people or us as a society. So
yeah, and I think a good note to probably end this segment on is the fact that in the creative space, we as creatives, we do see things differently to the world. Like, we get the concept. We saw the ad, we got the concept straight on because we're in the creative space and we're thinking conceptually.
Yeah.
People outside of the creative space, however, will have their own lives that they're in, their own sensitivities, and they're not thinking in the same way that we are. So they're receiving the ad, they're receiving the message in a totally different context, a totally different environment to us. So then it hits different for them. And I think what we in the creative industry have to be mindful of and careful about is to not get so caught up in our idea that we lose sight of the fact that it has to reach an audience.
Yeah, it has to be well
communicated. It has to reach the people. It has to be well communicated. It has to go into the lives of others and be transformed by whatever experiences they're going through in their lives.
Which is true.
And if we don't take that into consideration, an ad, a campaign, whatever has the potential to fall dangerously flat, even though we meant it completely different.
Yeah.
It has the potential to fall dangerously flat, like we saw happen with this Apple ad.
Yeah, that's true.
So in the realm of Apple's ad, we actually saw Samsung do something that I thought was quite brilliant. Now, I am in no way like a Samsung fan, but give Jack his jacket. Samsung came out with a response ad to Apple's ad, and in the ad you see, again, we'll put a link to it in the description. In the ad, you see a young lady walk in, and she's walked into the rubble after all these things have been crushed, and she picks up a damaged guitar. There is this tablet on an easel with like sheet music on it, and she starts to play the guitar. And I can't remember the song that she's playing, but she's playing this song, and she just uses it, and she's enjoying actually interacting with the real guitar. And ever so slightly, you see Samsung's logo on the back of the tablet, and there's just one line at the end of the ad, and it is brilliant. It reminded me of a direction Apple would take back in their days when they had I'm a Mac and I'm a PC. Those ads where they were really coming for Microsoft.
Right.
And so it really was a really cool, interesting ad.
Yeah, I think from a marketing perspective, it was very socially aware and it was very quick. Right?
Yeah.
I think that was the because it
was quick. It wasn't a week.
Yeah, it wasn't even a week, or I don't know if it was 3 days, but that you guys told me about that ad. And I was saying, that what I like about that is how active the marketing space is in that regard. It's like, like we're on the ball, we're paying attention to the world around us, because this helps inform our marketing, which then feeds back into how effective our marketing will be and reaching the people that it needs to reach. But it also kind of this isn't the first time Samsung's done this.
No.
I
think it's the quickest they've done it, but it's not the first time.
But that competition, that competitive side of marketing, I think is always good to have.
Yeah.
Because I think it adds a level of not necessarily humor. Humor's not the word I'm trying to.
Humor is playfulness.
Playfulness and levity to the marketing spaces. It's like you feel like you're almost like watching these two giants, like you're
in a tennis match.
Right? Right?
Oh, you
thing,
did
right?
that, yeah.
Right. I was like, you having some sort of fun. It gives the viewer something to kind of almost be a little bit more emotionally invested in, outside of just you're selling a product, yay. Same both thing.
And it's kind of like the Drake and Kendrick Lamar battle.
That
is a topic for a different day.
That's a whole.
When you see two juggernauts going after each
sure.
other, I think that's what you're seeing, and I think the marketing world has missed that for a long time. You Burger King and I think McDonald's were after Burger King and Wendy's, and Burger King and McDonald's were after each other for a while. Like there was a period of time where they were tit for tat. And the marketing world has gone quiet with stuff like that. And to see the Samsung response to Apple is like, okay, something is happening.
Like more competition is it's very healthy. I would say it's very healthy for the marketing space. It was fun. It was actually fun to see.
It was fun to see, and it was really showed that Samsung was capitalizing on the criticism of Apple.
Yeah.
And they were like, instead of saying, they were like, listen, we can aid you in your creativity, but we won't replace the tools that you're going to use. You want to use a guitar? That's fine. Put the sheet music up on the tablet, save paper. You know?
So speaking of I would say tapping onto that human, very relevant fear about replacement and AI and technology. Google recently released a video, kind of like a very long update on their model. It's called Gemini, but I think they changed it to Google I/O or something like that.
Google I/O is a conference that they do every year. It's their like keynote conference.
So Google I/O, but it's still called Gemini.
Yeah, Google Gemini. Yeah, they rebranded what it had before, and now it's called Gemini.
Right. So to talk about that, no, it was definitely a very interesting video. I didn't watch all of it, but I watched like a 10-minute summary that I had.
Mm-hmm. And this is a relaunch of Gemini.
Yeah, this is a relaunch of Gemini. So the things that interested me the most obviously came to the search functions, capabilities of it. Well, I say search function, that's a bad term. It was more looking at the Project Astra that they had, and they were talking about how Google Gemini would be used for everyday use, right?
Yeah.
And it sparked my curiosity in terms of how this affects education. How is this, like, say 2 years down the line, how does this get integrated into, say, things like the workplace? You know, like things like the services that we already have, right? Like, Google Maps, just Google search engine in general. Like, what's the long-term effects of that?
Yeah, because I think one of the long-term effects is something they had in one of their videos where two people were talking and one only speaks Italian, the other one only speaks English, and it was able to offer active translation. It was able to offer active translation. I was like, yo, that's pretty cool.
That's very, very cool.
That's really, really cool to be able to see it in a real-world implication like that.
Because the better that gets, things like, like language barriers become less and less of an issue, and then when language barriers become less and less of an issue, cross-pollination of like work and travel and
ideas.
Ideas. Like we're no longer limited to the kind of ideas that might circulate in a Western culture. You might be able to see, okay, how's a Japanese person think? Like, how do I know you were
gonna say Japanese?
Okay, how's a Spanish person think, or how a French person thinks, right? but like the different cultural ideas that like that maybe don't get to branch
we
out.
don't get to interact with maybe except for like from the outside, but having that access of being able to speak the language through AI allows you to get into a culture,
exactly, right? So that was very interesting. There was also a part of it where they showed they were talking about the multimodal AI and how they built it to be multimodal, but they've also added a part. They're focusing on the part about context, like the AI being able to understand context. And there was a particular function they showed where the lady asked the AI if it could remember where she put her glasses, right? And the AI told her it was by a red apple, and she was able to find it and pick up the glasses and put them on, right? And I thought that was really cool because let's blow out the idea for a second. Like, say you had that kind of AI set up in your own house, right? And the usual, I can't find my keys, or
I know the usual,
right?
I can't find my keys. Trust.
Like you could ask the AI, hey, yo, you remember where this item was, or that's one, and I might be able to help you in that. That's a very simple and immediate way you could see how that is useful. But then the age-old question now, like when it comes to education now, it did have a segment about it was asking the AI, it was talking about, it had like a cash system written on a whiteboard, and the person asked what would help improve this system, right? And the AI was able to give an answer, but now you have to. So that is very immediately helpful in terms of like education or helping students, like okay, help me with this problem, help me with that problem. Is this correct? People challenging their ideas against a very intelligent system. But then you have to ask the question, it's like, okay, are we replacing tutors? Are we replacing our own ability to critically think, right?
Yeah, because we even did it in the office the other day. We were working on some branding options for a client, and we use the AI to help us brainstorm. Like, we use ChatGPT and we asked it certain questions around certain words, but then we discuss the results.
Yeah.
So it became part of the brainstorm session rather than the brainstorm session.
Exactly.
And I think the fear that a lot of tutors have, institutions, is that students are using it, and to be fair, they probably are, using it to be their thought process, where they put in information, it outputs something.
To write their essays, to answer their questions.
And I mean, that, you get a grade, but do you actually learn something?
Right.
And does it then decrease or devalue the human experience in the long run?
Yeah, because we've already had issues where children in America, I don't know if it's anywhere else, but children in America are suffering from they did not be able to read very well.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Oh, here in Barbados too.
Right.
Absolutely.
So now, how's this how with the introduction of AI, how does that propagate into the future now, where say children no longer with access to these kinds of AI, will children be able to actually learn how to critically think? Will they develop normally in the way that we need them to develop so as to sustain our future, right?
Yeah.
And I think those are things that those are questions that we can't really definitively answer now, because in a way it's still new technology, and it hasn't happened yet, right?
Yeah.
It hasn't happened.
Well, it's happening now. Like we're seeing AI's introduction. We're seeing how people are overusing it, misusing it,
things like
those
that.
sorts of things. So I think what we will need to see is some sort of regulatory framework pop up for how, I think you mentioned before the podcast, the AI police. Some kind of regulatory framework pop up for how is AI used, where it should be used, when it should be used, and for how much of your content. Can AI be used up to 40% of your content, 60% of your content? What makes it your content if you've over a certain point, right? And I think those sorts of regulations come with time, come with usage, and come with development of the industry. But I think what needs to happen now, because of how, we saw Sora at the start of this year come up with these amazing stock videos, AI generated. I think these things need to be put in place now, when these things are being developed, so that by the time they get into common use, these frameworks are already there. Because without it, it's going to run too far.
Yeah, very much so. But you talked about Sora generating a generative video, right? And that just reminded me about in their key in Google's I/O presentation. They had producers. They had a segment where music producers and artists were talking about the generative capabilities of the. I can't remember which model it was, but it was within Gemini system, helping them produce music, right? So now the more pertinent question with how AI affects us, say us as artists, us as creators, us as designers, the very question is, can AI replace us? Will AI replace us? Or what does the world look like when this technology gets better? Right? Because we've even used it in the office, right?
We've used it in the office for a couple of projects. We just released a video, what would Barbados look like in 70 years? We put it on TikTok, Instagram, and we generated those images based on real images of Barbados, and had the AI engine just generate make Barbados look futuristic. So there is a conceptual place for it. In Adobe's Firefly engine, that's amazing.
Right. Yeah, that's another thing we have to think about.
But where does photography end and AI begin? How much can you say something is a photograph when you've added in a lighthouse, added in mountains, added in lampposts and buildings and clouds? Is it still your photo?
Yeah.
And that's the big question. Is it still your photo, or does that count as post-production? Where does the photo end and AI begin? And I think those are the sorts of conversations we need to be having. I think that as creatives, I am not an early adopter. I live on more the side of skepticism. I believe paranoia saves lives. But we have to be, I think, on the forefront, and we have to tell the industry how we use AI. We can't let it be we can't let it get too far ahead of where we're willing to go. We have to hold on to it, and we have it's like a horse. We have to hold on to the reins and say, you will go this way. We will use you like this. Rather than the industry getting away from us, the technology getting away from us, and we have to play catch up. Because if that happens, then we become obsolete.
But here's the thing: people were making similar claims about Photoshop back in the day. Like maybe I don't know if it was 10, maybe 15 years ago.
Probably way before that.
Way before that, but people kind of had similar criticisms about Photoshop. And then Photoshop just became the standard for image creation, right?
Right.
You know, photo manipulation, things like that, art, stuff like that, right? So
what you said there became the standard for photo manipulation, but you still had to do the work.
Right.
You still had to use Photoshop to manipulate.
Right, but that's what I'm kind of saying is like now with AI, the level of photo manipulation has just evolved. It's still technically we know how we've tested the Photoshop beta ourselves, and pretty much how we've integrated it into our workflow is like, you know, maybe when we want to cut out a character, a person from a background, you know,
remove
background
works
brilliantly. When we want to put in a different background or put in or splice in an image, the Photoshop beta works with that, right? So, and I think at this stage currently, I don't know what the future holds. I think at this stage currently, it's pretty much just an augment for all the things that we already do. And the thing that I think is really cool about it now is because it introduces a thought where, you know, that's somebody like accessibility. You can now put in text. You can now put in text to generate an image, right?
You can use your sketches to generate an image,
right? But what about people that can't do that? People that don't have that say don't have proper use of their hands, you know, like they like so people. It's a very common thing where people with disabilities don't have same access to all the different type of job opportunities that people that that, you know, have full capabilities do, right? But with something like introduction of AI like this in this format, they could even use voice commands where the only thing that they need to create is their mind, you know, and the
and
AI
then just tell the AI what they want,
and
it can create it,
right? So in that way, I'm actually not mad at it because because there's a creator that I really like his videos. His name is GX Ace or something like that. He does camera reviews, right? He has a disability where he can't even properly bend his his fingers, right? But with like more updates, the cameras and stuff, like the recent Fujifilm X100, that was perfectly timed as usual.
Yes.
Yeah. Right?
With the recent
with the Fujifilm, the recent Fujifilm S106, right? Or S106. It was easier for him to actually click the camera, right? And he felt the camera was designed for him, which helped. And I think that would definitely help him better create like more images, better images, and stuff like that, because it's geared towards accessibility, right? Accessibility is something that we really do need. I think should become more front of mind when we're talking about AI, because you know, like maybe then, let's say for like a crazy way, like with the integration of AI and active technology, you know, like maybe you don't need to be physically manipulating the thing itself. Maybe you could just use AI, like something like say a surgeon. Like obviously to be a surgeon, you need your hands, right? But say somebody wants to be a surgeon, but they don't have proper use of their hands. How could AI and technology, the fusion and the future of AI and technology, help that individual in the future to be able to do something that they actually really want to do, but their physical capabilities don't allow them to do that.
Yeah, so I think that was like when, you know, a couple years ago they were talking about 5G and the introduction of 5G and the latency between you know, one side of the equation and the other, where you might give the command to a piece of technology, but then there's a latency. 5G had shown in certain instances to significantly reduce that latency between the command and the act of like a robotic hand or something. Like it was significantly reduced. I think we're still a ways off from there, but with the introduction of AI, quantum computing, advancements in robotics, we're definitely seeing a world where these things are coming together. I think one of the things we have to think about, like getting back to the whole idea of like where does photography end and AI begin? Back in the day when Photoshop was introduced, either you were the photographer of the image, or you found a photographer, you bought the image from him, but you still had to do the physical manipulation, the blending of the images, etc., and use Photoshop to do it. Now it's, hey, give me an image of a mountain with a lighthouse, clouds at midday with people frolicking on the beach. Sit there, prompt, loading, generate. And what did you do? You know, there's that question, that, I guess, philosophical, existential question. What did you really do? How did you really create it? And is it really yours?
Right.
You know, and I think that's a good place, I think, to ask our viewers, like, tell us in the comments, what do you think of that? Is it really yours? Did you really generate it? Or is it just the technology doing the work for you?
Is an AI artist like a genuine thing? Like, can you be an AI artist? You know, is it something they can definitely recognize? Or another question that would be relevant is, like, how has AI benefited or not benefited you in your design work, or how, or the approach, you know, the attitude that clients would have, you know, like, because, you know, like, one of the things we would have to consider, actually, a person posed this question to me, is like, not in an offensive way, but he was kind of like, you know, in the future, you kind of have to ask, I have to ask you, what's the use of your skill if I could just get AI to generate it for me, right? And it's a very relevant question.
Yeah, like I was telling a parent at the recent portfolio show that the students had at the Barbados Community College, it then boils down to, we have to think of ourselves as creative professionals, something I talk about a lot, and what is our conceptual thinking? Because there's still the emotional, so there's still the conceptual, there's still that human level of thinking. AI can process, but AI processes, AI doesn't think. It processes information very fast, with access to a lot of resources. I know people talk about AI hallucinations, but AI doesn't think. And someone will say, well, maybe you're wrong. Maybe somebody who knows AI better than me may say you're wrong. I would challenge them on that, because thought is something that's inherently human. You know,
we develop thought over time through observations, through multiple things, and AI, at least in its current form, hasn't done that.
Yeah, so we sharpen our imagination, we sharpen our emotional intelligence, we sharpen our conceptual thinking,
our contextual thinking,
and we use that to harness the power of AI. And I think that's where the beautiful marriage can be between the human and the artificial intelligence.
Yeah, so I don't have much else to say on the topic.
Well, thanks very much, guys, for joining us for this episode of the ReThink podcast. Give us your comments below.
Yeah, I really want to know what you guys think about it, because we will be talking about it in like future episodes. Yeah, and
don't forget to like, comment and subscribe.
Yeah.
Share this video with friends, people you think, and have the discussion below in the comments. We look forward to maybe featuring some of your comments in the next episode of the ReThink podcast.
So with all that said, have a wonderful day wherever you are.
Wonderful day, night, whenever.
And we'll see you in the next one.
Later.